The stellarite drifted like a wound in the sky, systems flickering, corridors humming with an invisible tension. Something about the ship felt heavier, as if gravity itself had deepened just beneath the threshold of notice. The relics they had brought up from the vault below no longer lay dormant. They were activating. Scarlet stood before one of the viewing windows in the upper observatory, her silhouette framed by a field of dying stars. Her skin bore faint traceries of pink luminescence, like old veins lit from within. She wasn't speaking much anymore. She was listening to something that Nora could not hear, that shouldn't be heard. "I think she sees them now," Nora whispered, eyes scanning the diagnostic scrolls that flashed erratically across her tablet. "Sees who?" asked Cale, entering the room behind her. "The others, whatever Mirren warned us about. The ones she wasn't the first to stop." Cale folded his arms. "We haven't even verified Mirren was sentient." "She spoke to me," Nora snapped, her voice harder than intended. "You don't speak to someone if you're just instinct. You don't sacrifice memory if you don't know what it means to forget." Cale hesitated. "You believe Scarlet's becoming like her?" "I think she already is. The question is, how long until she stops being Scarlet?" That night, Nora awoke in her cabin drenched in cold sweat. The walls around her pulsed. Not visibly, not in a way any camera could catch, but in a felt way. Like the hull was breathing, whispering, waiting. She moved to splash water on her face, but as she passed the mirror, she stopped. Her reflection was crying, but she wasn't. Nora stumbled back, hitting the wall behind her. The image continued to sob silently, eyes pleading. Then it mouthed a single word, "Mirren." Suddenly, alarms began to blare across the stellarette. Red light bathed the corridors. Nora bolted out of her room, sprinting toward the lab, where the relics had been locked. They were gone, in their place, an engraving scorched into the reinforced containment table. The pattern resembled a constellation that didn't exist, not in any charted star map. Yet Nora recognized it. It was the pattern etched along Mirren's spine, the same one now spreading faintly across Scarlet's back. Scarlet was no longer asleep. She stood on the hull of the stellar exposed to the void, and yet alive, untouched, breathing in nothing. The glass above the bridge showed her like a statue bathed in cosmic fire. Around her the shadows bent ever so slightly, not in shape, but in attention. Something was watching through the folds of space, or many somethings. Nora reached the bridge. She got out. The airlock didn't even register, a crewman gasped. "No, she didn't get out," Nora said slowly, stepping to the viewport. "She was called." Scarlet raised her hand toward the stars. Her voice, now deeper, layered with a harmonic echo, vibrated across the ship's systems. "Memory was meant to be sacred," she said. "But they learned to feed on it." And then she screamed. It wasn't a human sound. It was old. Too many notes at once. Like glass shattering in reverse, every screen on the ship flickered. Then the starfield beyond twisted. A shape emerged, not from space, but from behind perception itself. A massive, ghost-like presence of shifting limbs and endless eyes, made from failed memories of civilizations that had once thought themselves gods. Nora fell to her knees. The crew screamed. Scarlet did not move. The entity, Catherine, though none dared speak it aloud, regarded her like a child watching a candle. "Catch flame. Let them forget," Scarlet said softly, and activated the relic fragment Nora had given her. There was a blinding flash, a pulse. The ship screamed, then silence. Nora awoke in a hospital ward, on a station she didn't recognize, with stars outside that weren't the ones she remembered. "Scarlet," she croaked. The doctor only looked confused. "Who?" Nora sat on the edge of a strange hospital bed, clothed in fabric too soft to be synthetic, surrounded by technology too advanced to feel artificial. The room pulsed with gentle light. No visible fixtures, just walls that glowed in sympathy with her breath. But none of this was familiar, not the pale-skinned medics who glanced at her with polite detachment, not the constellations outside hanging in geometric patterns, impossible under known stellar physics. And most of all, not the aching emptiness in her mind, where the name Scarlet once lived like a scar. She remembered something, someone with fire in her voice and sorrow in her eyes, a pink-skinned colossus rising from ancient stone, echoes of a name, but the memory was warped, frayed. "Who did I lose?" she whispered aloud. No one answered. Later they called her into a chamber shaped like a spiral seashell, walls folding inward, voices whispering from hidden alcoves. A figure awaited her in the center. Tall, statuesque, skin shimmering faintly violet, eyes slit-pupilled and ancient. She introduced herself as Archivist Kell. "You're the anomaly," Kell said, "the one who returned with no tether, no echo, no metadata trail, a woman out of context." "I was with someone," Nora said. "Someone important. Her name was—" She stopped. The words stuck like broken glass behind her teeth. "I knew her," she insisted. Kell tilted her head. "Many who cross into the fold come back, altered. Gaps where memory once resided. You brought something else, though." She tapped a panel. A hologram appeared in the air between them. Not of Scarlet, not directly, but of waves, memory ripples structured like speech. A sound Nora had heard only once before. Scarlet's scream on the Stellarit's hull. "It's embedded in your cellular makeup now," Kell explained. "This is not normal. What you carry isn't just sound, it's a frequency of remembrance." "What does that mean?" "That she didn't vanish," Kell replied, stepping closer. "She anchored herself in you." That night Nora dreamt again. But it wasn't a dream. It was a transmission. She stood on the shattered surface of an unknown moon, beneath a starless sky. Obelisks jutted from the ground like broken teeth. In the distance, a shape moved, vast, slow, beautiful, Mirren, but not as she had become. She was larger now, more radiant. Her skin refracted starlight even in darkness. Around her orbited symbols like language made from emotion, and in her palm, impossibly small, stood Scarlet. Her eyes met Nora's. "Do you remember me now?" Nora reached forward and woke screaming. On her arm, where nothing had been, now bloomed a faint trace of that same glowing constellation from the relic table. A sign, a path, a memory reborn. Somewhere, far from Nora's chamber and deeper still into forgotten space, a slumbering intelligence pulsed awake. The entity Catherine, woven from millennia of erased civilizations, felt the flicker of resistance. In Nora's awakening, she stirred, and reality blinked. The halls beneath the archivist's domain were lined with reflections, corridors made of curved glass and memory-reactive crystal. As Nora descended, each step shimmered with trailing images, not of herself but of Scarlet. A dozen versions of her, laughing, screaming, bleeding, singing. "What is this place?" Nora whispered. "The atrium of resonance," said Archivist Kell, guiding her forward, "where thought echoes, where memory either finds harmony or breaks." They reached a circular chamber. In its center floated an obsidian sphere suspended by nothing. It pulsed once, recognizing Nora, and began to rotate. Around them, mirrored panels responded, forming a sequence. Images came fast, raw, and without warning. The stellar ray crashing, Mirren's colossal hand, shielding them from the atmosphere's fury. Scarlet walking willingly into the beam of the obelisk to shield Nora. But it was more than that. Scarlet wasn't destroyed. She was translated, rewritten into something that remembers through others. "She knew she'd vanish," Nora said, voice quivering, "but she chose to anchor herself to me." Kelly studied her carefully. "That's what love is in your kind, isn't it? A form of encryption, self-turned artifact." The orb pulsed again, faster. Nora stepped closer, and suddenly she was elsewhere, inside the fold. Not as a body, but as a stream of data, floating among shattered moons, fractal ruins and glyphs like crying faces. In the distance, a shape larger than worlds turned its head toward her. Catherine, not a being, a pattern, a fracture in logic itself, born from the silence left behind by a lost civilization's scream. She had once been code, a failsafe, a virus. Now she was myth. "You seek her?" came the voice. It was dozens layered, all speaking her name. "Scarlet is noise. Scarlet is failure. Scarlet is mine." "I'm not afraid of you," Nora said, but her voice trembled. Catherine's shadow loomed. "Then you've forgotten what pain feels like." The vision shattered. She gasped awake in the atrium. Blood trickled from her nose. Her reflection across the chamber moved out of sync, smiling before she did. "She's tracking me," Nora said. "Scarlet didn't just anchor herself in me. Catherine saw it. She's following the signal." Kell nodded solemnly. "Then we have to amplify it." That night, under the black glass domes of the alien city, Nora stood atop the memory spire with the sphere of resonance before her, humming in anticipation. "I'm coming for you," she whispered to the stars, "and I'm bringing your voice with me." The orb pulsed once, and Scarlet's voice returned, not as memory, but as weapon, a scream sharp enough to tear the fold. The memory spire thrummed beneath Nora's feet, responding to the resonance of Scarlet's scream, a frequency not made for air or ear, but for something deeper, something older. Each pulse from the black orb summoned geometries into the air, equations folded into symbols, folded into song. The sky above the city darkened not with clouds but with presence. The fold stirred. Archivist Kell, now hooded in layers of bioreactive glyphs, chanted in parallel, "The fold doesn't open. It listens. Make it remember. Make it ache." Nora closed her eyes. Her mind was no longer just her own. Scarlet was there, an imprint scattered across memory strands. She didn't speak in words now, but in feeling, a burning sorrow, a fierce love, a refusal to vanish. Nora let the song pour from her throat. It wasn't human music. It was raw, broken, nonlinear. Each note ruptured part of the space above, like glass cracking from the inside. Beneath the surface of reality, the fold began to twitch, as if in response to an itch it didn't know it had. And then Catherine answered, with silence. It wasn't an absence of sound. It was the erasure of meaning, of identity. The stars above the city blinked out, not because they were blocked, but because Catherine no longer recognized them. "Stop!" Kell shouted. "She's unweaving the world. You must anchor yourself." But Nora didn't stop. She sang louder, into the blankness, and in that moment Scarlet returned, not as a body, not as a ghost, as form, a silhouette made of starlight and faultlands, towering, familiar, beautiful. Scarlet emerged from the ruptured sky like a cathedral walking upright, her face still hers, still herself, but laced with something alien and divine. Catherine screamed, not in fear but in error. She could not compute what Scarlet had become. A memory that refused deletion, a living contradiction. Scarlet turned toward Nora, her voice now crystalline, otherworldly. "I remember you." "I never stopped," Nora whispered. In the skies above, the fold cracked. What was once a veil of forgetting became a mirror of remembrance. Catherine tried to retreat, but found herself trapped inside the reflection, bound not by power, but by meaning. She was no longer a threat. She was an echo, and Scarlet reborn was. Her silence? Below, Archivist Kell fell to their knees, awestruck. "The fold has never been pierced," they murmured. "You didn't just break it. You rewrote its syntax." Scarlet knelt, brushing her massive hand against Nora's cheek. "I didn't escape it," she said softly. "I became what it couldn't erase." Nora took her hand. "Then let's show the stars what that means." The fold had been pierced, but not collapsed. It shimmered now like an open wound in the sky, radiating both memory and distortion. Around it, the archive of all things began to unravel, not in destruction, but in transformation. Where once There were cold halls of indexed data. There bloomed light fields, thought loops, entire rooms built from emotion rather than stone. Scarlet stood amidst it all, her new form casting refracted shadows that bent the air. She was no longer simply alien or human, she was the memory of both, crystallized into will. Nora walked beside her, small but resolute. "What now?" she asked. Scarlet turned her gaze toward the horizon, where fleets once loyal to Catherine now hovered in stillness, leaderless, confused, watching. "They'll come for us," Scarlet said. "Or for the Fold. They'll try to weaponize what I've become." "They'll fail," said Nora, "because they'll never understand it wasn't power that brought you back." Scarlet smiled faintly. It was remembrance. From the center of the archive, the spire's systems flared online. Glyphs rearranged into spiraling corridors of data, now no longer restricted to approved queries. The memories once locked away behind bioencryption and overseer codes were now alive, moving through the air like birds of light. Scarlet walked through them, and they bent to her presence. Forgotten languages sang again. Lost species told their stories. Broken histories rewrote themselves in the light of new context. Catherine had silenced billions. Now every silenced voice was being given back its song. Nora reached the spire's control node. "We can restore everything, every archive, every erased life. But," Scarlet added, "only if we don't become what Catherine was. Control is a tempting substitute for trust." Nora placed her hand on the console. "Then we won't control. We'll share." Across the galaxy, dormant shards of the Fold shimmered, no longer prisons of thought, but beacons. Worlds once cut off by Catherine's censorship flickered to life. The Fold now remembered. And it would never forget again. From deep within the core of the spire, a last recorded message from Catherine surfaced, fragmented, distorted, but unmistakable. "You don't understand what I tried to protect you from. Remembrance summons things that are drawn to memory like insects to flame. You've opened the door." Scarlet and Nora stood together as the archive trembled, but this time not in fear, they welcomed what came next. The Fold's resonance deepened, not in destruction but in echo. Across distant worlds, people began to dream in languages they'd never spoken. Children woke, remembering ancestors they never met. Machines blinked to life, murmuring forgotten lullabies. The archive had gone viral, not as a weapon, but as a song no longer silenced. Scarlet stood at the threshold of the spire where solid stone met shifting memory. Her pink-hued form pulsed in time with the Fold's rhythm. Beside her, Nora worked a console that no longer responded to commands, but to intent. Each key press was a question, and the system answered with flashes of truth. "Scarlet," Norris whispered. "The Fold's not just remembering, it's dreaming." Scarlet turned slowly. "Dreams are how a mind reshapes itself. It's alive now, and maybe it always was." Above them, the sky fractured, thin slivers opening into other archives, other timelines, not alternate futures, but forgotten presents. One revealed a city where the first contact with Scarlet's people never ended in conflict, but in coexistence. Another showed a human child raised in a floating temple of alien monks. A third showed Scarlet herself, human, sitting with Nora, in a sunlit garden, laughing. "Are these possibilities?" Nora asked. Scarlet shook her head. "They're truths, ones we never wrote." Beneath their feet, the archive hummed, and then pulsed outward in waves. Around the galaxy, those who had once been erased from the official record began to reappear, not as ghosts, but as restored presences. Artists, rebels, scientists, dissidents, each one drawn from obscurity and given shape again in the great memory field, and with each restoration, the Fold grew stronger. Nora leaned closer to Scarlet. "What do we do now? We've won, but it feels like a beginning, not an end." Scarlet didn't answer right away. She stepped into the threshold, where memory lapped at her skin like liquid light. The archive always demanded sacrifice. But now it offers choice, she said. Then choose, Nora replied. What kind of story do we leave behind? Scarlet smiled. One that remembers us kindly. The sun above Virilia 3 shimmered with impossible color, lavender hues rippling like silk, refracted through atmospheric memory. From orbit, the planet looked unchanged, but within its biosphere, within the hidden threads of its crystalline core, a new consciousness stirred. The archive had not vanished. It had evolved. It no longer required sacrifice. It no longer craved control. It remembered. In the highlands of the Sanctuary Plateau, Nora stood alone beside a silent monolith, one of the last ancient pillars from the pre-collapse era. Her hand brushed across alien script now, glowing faintly, with renewed light. A whisper of Scarlet's voice floated through the wind. We are what we choose to carry forward. Nora closed her eyes and let the warmth of the phrase sink in. Around her, bioluminescent flora pulsed gently, living memory nodes feeding the soil with resonance from across the stars. Far above, in low orbit, a new kind of vessel drifted, neither human nor alien, but both. The Requiem conquered as it was called, bore no weapons, no flags, no command seats. Only a single chamber, a chamber of memory. Here, the last echoes of war, betrayal, erasure had been transcribed, not to be locked away, but to be shared. The vessel sang its story to other worlds, other minds willing to listen. And when a planet responded, it sent back its own memory song, weaving a larger, older harmony than any species had ever known. Scarlet was gone, not dead, not ascended, transcribed. She now existed in every particle the archive had touched, not as a ghost, not as code, but as memory incarnate. She was the whisper in systems just before boot, the flicker in the stars when a child asked why they pulsed, the smile behind an old song no one remembered writing. The beast, the name they once used for the archive, was no longer feared. It had become something else, a mirror, a sanctuary, a story that chose not to forget. And as suns across the galaxy burned bright, a new age began, not ruled by machines or flesh, but by remembrance. When suns remember, so do we.